Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. I believe that your body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself regardless of what chronic disease you may have. And I'm here for you to answer your questions, bring you innovative and cutting edge technology and health solutions to empower you and your ability to reach your optimal state of health. Today, my guest, I'm so excited. We will be talking about the relationship between dopamine and depression. I feel like everyone in your life needs to hear this. If you are suffering from depression or a mood disorder, it affects your physical health and your spiritual health, body, mind, and spirit, right? Whether it's overcoming anxiety and depression, losing weight, or detoxing your body in the proper way, and even increasing that level of frequency in life, you need that strong physical foundation of health in order to gain the willpower to make the bigger changes in life. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you get there. You can find my health articles, my cutting edge natural frequency enhanced supplements, devices, and protocols at sarabantahealth.com. I dive into an array of health conditions, their causes and symptoms, and how to address them naturally. And my website is the sponsor of this show. So as you support my website, I'm able to bring you more cutting edge content and guests to this show. So I mentioned we are going to be talking about depression and dopamine, but first I wanted to talk about some tools you can use to enhance the results you achieve, make it easier to reverse that depression, reverse hormonal decline, improve your energy physically and mentally, and then of course, reverse aging. I turned 47 this last weekend, and you better believe that I am wanting to live as if I'm 20 years old. So I'm all in on reverse aging. The goal is to reverse insulin resistance, reduce toxicity, improve mitochondrial health, and increase energy at the cellular level. And all of these things are tied to reverse aging and eliminating all chronic disease. The first is accelerated keto. And why is this important, even for the topic today? It flips you into fat burning mode within 30 minutes, and your body taps into its own fat stores for energy right away. You feel great physically and mentally right away. And you say, oh my gosh, I can do this. I remember when I first started taking this supplement, it was during the holidays. And all holidays have drama, right? But I remember getting to January going, that was weird. There was not much drama. I felt much more calm. And the only change was accelerated keto. No one else changed. The family stress didn't change. The other things didn't change. This was the only thing that changed. You feel great physically and mentally, and you go, okay, now what do I want to do? I want to do more work. I want to work out. I have the energy and I have the motivation to do it. You combine it with intermittent fasting and a low carb diet, that ATP production increases significantly in the mitochondria and your energy increases. And then it also is able to break down those saturated fats into unsaturated fats. And this is important because you're able to utilize those unsaturated fats easier and convert them into ketones. So it's almost like a second source of ketones. And when you're fasting, that body fat's more readily available to burn. You increase that autophagy, and that's the cleanup mechanism in your body. So because of that property, accelerated keto is actually able to defat your liver, that fatty liver disease that so many are suffering from. And the more your liver is defatted and unclogged, the easier it is for it to function in all areas, include fat metabolism and breaking down, including mitochondrial biogenesis. also including converting the thyroid hormones from T4 to the active T3, which is super important. And I get into thyroid and depression this month because this is Thyroid Awareness Month. So it's really important to optimize your thyroid functioning for your mental health, but it also will increase your metabolism, mitochondrial function, and your energy. Acceleradine iodine is the quickest way to alleviate that depression. Why? Iodine deficiency is the number one cause of depression, and iodine's needed in all the tissues, not just your thyroid, and it helps increase ATP production by 18 times, not 18%, but 18 times, and that's true cellular energy. It also reverses the damage done to the DNA by the mRNA and the spike protein. We've been seeing this. It also increases mental and physical energy, increases fat oxidation, helps improve the metabolism, and then, of course, optimizes your thyroid function. It has 100% bioavailability. No other iodine supplement does. And it is also enhanced with scalar frequencies to detox the cells from heavy metals, graphene oxide, and radiation. No other iodine incorporates those healing scalar frequencies. Accelerated thyroid. So this is what I wanted to get into. So many people are misdiagnosed with depression, thinking it's a mood disorder, where really it's hypo or hyperthyroidism. And I just had a client come to me and she goes, ever since I've been taking accelerated thyroid, I'm so happy. I don't know what to do with my happiness. This is the only advanced formula that combines two different thyroid supplement formulas in one and then enhances it with scalar frequencies for advanced healing. I have spent thousands of dollars on individual ingredients to support my thyroid. So that's why we designed this natural supplement. We've included those two formulas. We then have added additional ingredients to enhance not just the thyroid, but the overall physical and mental health. And then we enhance it with the scalar frequencies to heal the thyroid, to neutralize toxins found in the thyroid like chlorine, fluoride, mercury, and other metals, and also neutralize the radiation and the nuclear fallout and the radiation from your smartphone when you are on TikTok and social media that's causing your depression because you are getting that dopamine hit, which we're going to get into. Next, it's coming in February, Cognoblast. This is a cutting-edge natural brain enhancement product that increases mental focus, energy, memory, mood, and learning speed. And it also helps prevent the brain diseases we're all worried about, like Alzheimer's and dementia, me included. I've got all the genes that are directed towards Alzheimer's. So you better believe I'm taking this supplement every single day. But it also increases your mood and helps with those happy hormones that we will be talking about. I give more tips and tools through my free group coaching. You can join with the link below on Telegram or email me through the website, sarabantahealth.com. The difference between me and any other group coaching is I provide the most cutting edge frequency enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body doesn't experience those flu-like symptoms. You truly do feel great day one. Leave a comment below if you're interested or check it out on the website. Now to the good stuff. And Dr. Anna Lembke, she is back. She's a professor of psychiatry at my alma mater, Stanford University School of Medicine, and chief of the Stanford Addiction Medicine Dual Diagnosis Clinic. Her latest book, Dopamine Nation, an amazing book, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence, was an instant New York Times bestseller and explores how to moderate compulsive overconsumption in a dopamine overloaded world. That's a mouthful. Welcome, Anna. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You know, this topic could go on for hours and hours and applies to everybody. We have so much to do with the social media. And I love what I heard you say, that we are meant for scarcity. We are not meant for abundance in our life. And we now are living in a life of abundance. We're not needing anything, right? So what I want to first get into is that obvious relationship between addiction and depression, which we got into addiction deeply last time. I want to dive into depression. So what are the symptoms, first of all, of low dopamine levels?
Yeah, great question. When we get into that dopamine deficit state, which is what happens in addiction, it can look just like depression. People feel irritable, anxious, unable to sleep, distractible. Obviously, if the origin of their depression is addiction, then they also have intrusive thoughts of wanting to use their drug. They focus on that drug of choice as the only thing that will lift them out of their depression. And in the short term, it will, but the problem is that the cumulative effect of that drug is actually to drive those dopamine levels even further down and to really create, that syndrome of depression that people get into. So those two things can be very hard to differentiate. We talk about addiction as the great mimic of other psychiatric disorders. When people are high, they can look manic, psychotic. When they are withdrawing, they can look very, very depressed. And of course, chronic use, again, creates a dopamine deficit state that mimics depression.
That also begs the question. I have heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's no real way to get a blood test to diagnose depression other than a correlated relationship with BDNF, that brain-derived neurotropic factor. So how can you, am I wrong? Is there a blood test to diagnose depression or low dopamine levels?
You're absolutely right. There is no blood test or brain scan to diagnose really any psychiatric disorder. So there's lots of research suggesting that there are certain markers, biological markers, that there are certain types of brain images that are consistent with depression and other psychiatric disorders, but we're not anywhere close to a kind of definitive, you get a blood test or you get a brain scan and you're able to say, oh, okay, that's what this person has. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Can you explain, is dopamine a hormone? What is dopamine? And go into the pain-pleasure balance. It's really interesting the way you explain it with that seesaw.
Okay, sure. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, which means it's a chemical that we make in our brain, and it bridges the gap between neurons. That gap is called the synapse. So neurons are these long, spindly cells that conduct the electrical circuits that make our thoughts and emotions, but they don't touch end to end. There's a little space between them. That space is the synapse, and neurotransmitters are the little molecules that go back and forth to allow for finer tuning of that electrical signal. And dopamine is one of those neurotransmitters. It's very important for pleasure, reward, and motivation. It's very important for movement. It is the neurotransmitter that gets depleted in a part of the brain called the substantia nigra when people develop Parkinson's disease. And it is the neurotransmitter that gets dysregulated in a part of the brain called the reward pathway, which consists of the prefrontal cortex, the nucleus accumbens, and the ventral tegmental area. Things that are addictive or even just reinforcing or that feel good are things that release a lot of dopamine all at once in the reward pathway. The more dopamine they release, the faster they release dopamine, the more likely that substance or behavior is to be addictive. So what happens as people become addicted is that essentially they change their brains and they change their baseline dopamine firing level. So we're always releasing dopamine in the reward pathway at a tonic baseline level, kind of like a heartbeat. When the firing goes above baseline levels, that's something that's reinforcing or novel or something that we need to pay attention to in the environment. And when firing goes below baseline, that's where we experience craving, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria. So essentially what happens is that pleasure and pain work kind of like a balance. If you imagine a beam on a central fulcrum or a teeter-totter, that represents how we process pleasure and pain. When it tips one way, we feel pleasure. When it tips the other way, we feel pain. But one of the overarching rules governing that balance is that it wants to remain level, and our brains will work very hard to restore a level balance after any deviation from neutrality. So let's say we do something that's positive or reinforcing. We watch a TikTok video, we get a little release of dopamine in the reward pathway, and the balance tilts to the side of pleasure. But no sooner has that happened than our brain adapts, and I think of that as these neuroadaptation gremlins hopping on the pain side of the balance to bring it level again, but the gremlins like it there. So they stay on until the balance is tilted an equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. And that's the come down, the hangover, the after effect, that moment of wanting to watch one more TikTok video. Now, if we wait and we don't watch another video and the gremlins hop off and a balance is restored, then we can kind of go on our way. But if we watch another video, which is our natural inclination to do that because we want to, as quickly as possible, restore that balance, and repeating use is the way to do that. And then over time, we start to accumulate more and more gremlins on the pain side of the balance. Then that initial deviation to pleasure gets weaker and shorter, but that after response to pain gets stronger and longer. And eventually, we essentially change our pleasure pain set point. Now we're walking around with a gremlin tilted to the side of pain. We need more of our drug in more potent forms, not just to get high, but actually just to level the balance and feel normal. And when we're not using, we're walking around with this balance, with all these gremlins camped out on the pain side, experiencing the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance, which are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria, and craving. So that's the problem, with addiction, is that with exposure, we change our brains, but we don't have the sense of changing our brains over time. So it's very insidious and outside of our view. All we notice is that we're feeling more depressed, more anxious, more restless. We want more of our drug. We want to be doing it all the time. It's the only thing that gives us pleasure. We tell us stories that have to do with self-medication, that we're actually medicating underlying depression or anxiety, but really all we're doing is we're medicating withdrawal from our last dose and medicating an out of balance, just trying to get back to neutrality, which is why the first step in solving addiction, most or many addictions, but also dealing with depression, anxiety, and other unpleasant psychiatric symptoms is actually to eliminate the highly reinforcing drugs and behaviors in our lives. And behaviors, too, can be addictive. So just to extend the example, that would be eliminating watching TikTok for long enough for those neuroadaptation gremlins to hop off the pain side of the balance and for homeostasis or a level balance to be restored. And in general, in my clinical experience, also supported by the scientific evidence, that on average, it takes about a month of not using a particular drug or a substance for those gremlins to hop off and for a level balance or dopamine homeostasis to be restored. That doesn't mean we're fully healed, certainly not from a severe addiction, but it does mean that it's around 3 to 4 weeks of not using our drug that we begin to not be in that state of constant craving. Those first 2 weeks are terrible. We're really in intense withdrawal, experience intense cravings to use. But as we move into weeks 3 and 4, that begins to lessen, and then we can actually take joy in other things that we've lost the capacity to enjoy. And then moving forward, we can continue to abstain from that drug or that behavior, or if we want to reintroduce it into our lives, we can make sure that we reintroduce it in a way that doesn't get us tipped over chronically to the pain side of the balance. So that's using our drug in moderation, not using too potent a form, not using it too often, leaving enough time in between use for those neuroadaptation gremlins to hop off immediately and for homeostasis or that level balance to be restored.
So when you talk about the gremlins and the seesaw, there's the set point. So when you have used, or whether it's a drug or a behavior that has lowered your dopamine set point, so we're literally taking the teeter-totter and bringing it down, right? So how can, sorry about the dogs, dopamine levels be increased? Is there a way to actually increase your dopamine set point?
Right. So, well, first of all, the way that you can get back to, you can increase dopamine levels is first by abstaining from intoxicants. That will, at first, you'll go down into the pit, but eventually your body will get the memo and start to upregulate dopamine again. So that's the first step. But it turns out that we can also upregulate dopamine from our natural baseline by intentionally doing things that are hard. So this is things like exercise in moderation, ice cold water plunges in moderation, meditation, prayer, cleaning out the mess under your closet, anything that takes some consistent effort over time. Basically, this is the science of hormesis. It's a way of getting your body to sense injury, believe it or not, and then respond to that sensation of injury by beginning to make more of our feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. So, for example, exercise is immediately toxic to cells, but we also know exercise is very good for us. So how do we square that? Basically, although it's immediately toxic to cells, exercise in moderation will upregulate these feel-good hormones, and they will stay elevated for hours after the exercise before coming back down to baseline levels. So we don't have to pay for our dopamine by going to that dopamine deficit state. We pay for it up front with our effortful engagement. And there are lots of other examples of how to do that. Create creative exercises, and anything that's creative is typically effortful and will increase dopamine, especially as we get into the flow of a deep creativity and deep concentration. Again, meditation, prayer have all been shown to upregulate dopamine levels.
And, everyone thinks of serotonin, GABA, dopamine, all of them as the happy hormones, and they can actually put them in kind of this bucket of all together. What is the relationship with dopamine and serotonin and GABA and some of the other hormones and the endorphins?
Right. Well, many of those, although not all of the ones that you listed, are in the monoamine category. And the monoamine category is just a category of neurotransmitters that modulates things like sleep, appetite, euphoria, depression, mood overall. They work by slightly different mechanisms. They bind to different receptors. But overall, what they are is essentially chemicals in our brain that either make us feel pleasure or make us feel less anxiety or make us feel less pain. But again, all of them are very short-term actors, and they influence each other. And there really is no free lunch. So if you use an intoxicant to cause a flood of any of those hormones or neurotransmitters, you're going to pay for it with that dopamine deficit state or that come down afterwards. Whereas if you use something like exercise or ice cold freezing temperatures in order to get more of that particular hormone or neurotransmitter, then it will eventually return to baseline levels, but you won't have to go into that dopamine deficit state. So it's a much better way to do that. The caveat there is that you don't want to do things like cut on yourself. So any kind of intense pain that is too intense is not healthy for us. It does initially release a lot of our endogenous endorphins, for example. These are the opioids that our body makes, but it depletes our endogenous endorphins as well, such that with repeated use, it doesn't work at all. Whereas if we're engaging in mild to moderate painful activities like mild to moderate exercise, or mild to moderate exposure to freezing temperatures, and it's just the right amount, then we get that upregulation without depleting the neurotransmitters.
Okay, so then also, when I was going through my health rock bottom, essentially the wheels come off. But I had people in my life saying, Sara, you just need to be put on an antidepressant. Well, my depression wasn't the core problem. It was caused by, a bad gut and low thyroid and other things that just made me just not feel good. But this begs the question, how are the antidepressants affecting your dopamine?
Mm-hmm. Well, they all work by slightly different mechanisms, and we don't know exactly how they work. Like many psychotropics, we've really discovered them through trial and error and kind of accidentally, and then we've weighed the risk, benefits, and alternatives. So the first line antidepressants are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and those are the ones that basically inhibit the enzyme that breaks down serotonin in that synapse. So you remember the synapse is that space between neurons. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, so it gets released and binds to the postsynaptic neuron, and it modulates mood, appetite, sleep, all of it. And what the antidepressants, like the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Celexa, Luvox, everything in that category, do is they essentially inhibit the sort of enzyme that will break the serotonin down so that the serotonin that is released in the synapse hangs around there longer. So you effectively, at least initially, get more serotonin. It's very subtle. It's not like an intoxicant. Most people, the vast majority of people, don't get high on antidepressants. Some rare few will, but most people don't. And so it works to slightly increase, at least initially, the serotonin in the synapse and slightly increase mood. As far as we can tell, it doesn't have a big impact on dopamine release in the reward pathway. There are other antidepressants that might work through more of a dopamine mechanism and might actually increase dopamine in the reward pathway, especially if taken in large quantities. But typically, antidepressants don't lead to a kind of an immediate dopamine release, although I will say that we need more research in that arena.
I want to, and that really helps because I've heard a lot of people say when they've gotten on their antidepressants, they kind of feel numb. They feel more just flatlined, and that makes sense that it's not playing off of dopamine because dopamine's going to give you that drive to go after things. So it's more playing with the calm serotonin and just staying even keeled in mood. So we've talked about depression and addiction. I want to get into the addiction, the 5 things or the couple of things that you say: availability, quantity, this overabundance. We are in a world where even the low income households are still living in abundance compared to our ancestors. And with my kids, they're teenagers and now adults. I've got one that's an adult, but I've said no to TikTok. I said, if you want me to pay for your phone, get it off your phone right now. And it has something to do with China as well. But it's that availability. And I hear all the time from other parents, oh, my kids, when they get home, they just go straight to their room. They're on their bed and they're on their phone. And what they don't realize is they're isolating. They have a limitless amount of that the drug, right? So can you take us through what those things are, the availability and such, when you're looking at an addiction, and how it is going to lead to depression?
Yeah, sure. Let me start by saying that, social media can be an amazing way to connect people. It's not that it's all bad, but what happens is that the medium itself, separate from the human connections that we make on it, are so reinforcing that we can get lost in chasing dopamine, and it can become an activity separate from actually making human connections and can actually drive isolation. So I think that that's the key. It's not that it's all bad, and it can be a very wonderful tool. But again, because the medium has been engineered to keep us clicking and swiping, we can get to a place where we actually lose volitional control over how much and when we're consuming it, and because it's frankly addictive. So what makes something addictive? Again, it's anything that releases a lot of dopamine all at once in the reward pathway is addictive. The faster it releases dopamine, the more addictive it is. And the speed of release has to do in part with the medium. So for example, TikTok takes something that is already highly reinforcing for the human brain, a moving image, especially when paired with music or narration, already releases dopamine in the brain. And it condenses it down to this tiny little unit, which is essentially very potent and delivered over a very short period of time. So it's potent, it releases a lot of dopamine, and it's fast, it releases it very quickly. And it's that combination that makes something really, really reinforcing. It's like the difference between, let's say, taking an OxyContin as prescribed by your doctor for pain and crushing and snorting an OxyContin, which will then deliver it much more rapidly right to the central nervous system. So that's the problem. And so it's this access that we have, plus the potency, plus the quantity, plus the variety, plus the novelty of all of these digital drugs that turn them into something that can start out very benign and even positive, and then kind of tip over into this place where it's really controlling us rather than the other way around. And we don't necessarily see when that tipping point happens. I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, and you mentioned variety, and there's all of these different platforms. So here we are, we're having a diet of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. It's not just one. I mean, if you were to limit yourself to one, you probably would have a less likelihood to be addicted and have that depression from it. It's I love your example of American Idol. I've never really thought about it. I love all of those shows, The Voice, and they take the competition, they engage you, and they've got the music and the visual and all of these different aspects that are creating that perfect storm for an addiction. So what are the signs that you now have an addiction? And I know you just have a few more minutes with us. Before you go, I just wanted to grab that information, the control, that's leading then to the isolation and the depression. So what are those factors?
Yeah, so some of the signs and symptoms to look for suggesting that we are becoming addicted to either a substance or behavior is when we have out of control use. So I talk about the 3 C's: out of control use, that is planning to use for a certain amount for a certain period of time and always or regularly overdoing it. Compulsion means a lot of our mental real estate looking forward to using, covering up use. Lying is also one of the soft signs. If we find ourselves lying about what we're doing to others, we're probably also lying to ourselves, even if it's just an exaggeration of how much time we spent doing homework, for example, versus how much time we were actually playing video games or on TikTok or on Snapchat. So that kind of compulsive, where it's sort of just taking up more and more of our mental bandwidth. And then finally, if we're running into consequences related to use, that can be job consequences, school consequences, interpersonal consequences, health consequences. One of the things to look for too, sometimes people can't see the consequences, but other people are telling them, gee, this is a problem. And if you hear other people that you know and love and trust telling you that they're observing you using in a way that is consequential, for their relationship with you, or for the family, or for their hopes and dreams for you, or even your mood and your values, because people will feel very good when they're engaging with these substances and behaviors, and very bad afterwards, cranky, irritable, and not helpful. It's important to point that out to our loved ones when we observe that, and important for them to really listen to it with an open mind and ask themselves if maybe they really do have a problem. So control, compulsions, and consequences, especially continued use despite consequences, including interpersonal consequences.
It's really important to listen to your loved ones because they're looking out for you, and sometimes we can't see it in ourselves, and especially if you're isolating yourself, which is one of the symptoms. So, Anna, I know you have to go, and I'm so grateful that we had just this time with you. Where can people find you and your amazing book?
Well, thank you, Sarah, for asking. I'm not on social media because I know I wouldn't be able to moderate consumption, but there is a website, Lembke.com or dopamine-nation.com, and they can also find the book Dopamine Nation at that site.
Wonderful, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will continue talking about the topic at hand. So what I wanted to talk about, and Anna, you're free to go, is the fact that people are being misdiagnosed with depression when it could be an issue like an addiction, right? Or it is actually could be a thyroid issue or an adrenal issue, and you're being misdiagnosed. And I wanted to go into how the HPT axis, the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, and the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, are closely interacting and play off each other in response to stressors. Everyone has stress. Chronic stress is the pandemic, truly. As stress increases, the adrenals release the stress hormones like cortisol and epinephrine, and that HPT axis will start converting T4 into reverse T3, slowing down the metabolism, which is a survival mechanism. And as a result, your mood decreases, which then can increase your stress more, creating this vicious cycle. So both hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism have been linked to oxidative stress and inflammation produced from excess chronic stress, both which inflame the brain and the gut, where the mood neurotransmitters are manufactured, including GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. And so then if the gut's compromised, it will lead to that mood disorder. So in addition to affecting your T4 to T3 conversion, so you're not getting that metabolism bump from the T3, both issues will compound low mood and depression. So then you're sitting on your bed, pull out your phone, you're scrolling through TikTok and Instagram because you don't have the energy from low thyroid. Well, it's just this vicious cycle. And then the liver, where most of the conversion of T4 to T3 occurs, in addition to where our anger and frustration emotions are stored, right? Our organs actually store emotions. Kidneys store fear. Our liver stores that anger and frustration. So you've got that backed up or compromised liver, that will degrade your mood. Then the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys. So with chronic stress from the adrenals, the kidneys become inflamed, holding up the adrenals. And so then that's working suboptimally. And then the conversion from T4 to T3 is compromised again. So that fear that you've got in your kidneys and under stress is going to exacerbate the stress, lowering your mood and causing more depression. So then you've got this thyroid stress, which is defined as an emotional state characterized by just having discomfort or dejection caused by living with thyroid issues. Then hypothyroidism impacts the gonadal hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And this week I will be focusing on testosterone, that get shit done hormone, the drive in life, the drive to go work out, the drive to do well at work, the sex drive in the bedroom. All of those things are tied to your testosterone. And that also directly impacts T4 and T3. Then you've got, so what is the cause of our depression? Is it the social media? Is it the drugs? Is it the alcohol? Having a couple drinks the night before makes us feel good. But if you listen to my podcast on alcohol, it actually increases stress and the feeling of stress and increases depression, not just when you're not just after you drank the night before or during that day, but when you're not drinking. So even just drinking 1 to 2 drinks a night is going to increase your depression and lower your baseline dopamine. and get those pain, the gremlins on that pain side, as Dr. Anna Lembke was talking about. So signs that your thyroid is affecting your mental health and your depression: fatigue, brain fog, unexplained weight gain, insomnia, chronic stress, bouts of that manic or depressive state. And 30 to 50% of people experience no response to their antidepressants. So that's why I wanted to ask the question about antidepressants. How is it playing on the serotonin and the dopamine? Well, it's not really affecting your dopamine, so you're not going to get a boost in that. But if you are suffering from hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, then the serotonin effect isn't going to help with your thyroid. So you're not going to get that benefit or that improvement. And so a lot of people with thyroid issues are misdiagnosed with depression, put on a medication, and no amount of SSRIs are going to upregulate that thyroid, which is the root of the problem. In fact, a lot of people claim that they gain weight on these supplements or on these medications. People with thyroid issues also have more issues of PCOS or low libido and infertility. So it's affecting not just the brain, but our gonads and our hormones. And so that's why you will really want to look to what the root of the problem is. So where can you then go to help with your dopamine and help with your mood, help with your thyroid? The number one supplement everyone needs to be on is that acceleradine iodine. And I mentioned in the beginning that it's not just for thyroid health, but it is depression is the number one predictor of depression is the iodine deficiency. And this is the only one that has 100% bioavailability for all cells in your body. And you want to increase the dosage slowly, because as you're doing so, it's going to detox your brain and your thyroid and every cell from those heavy metals and the radiation that are causing disruption in your happy hormones and causing that anxiety. Because if you think about it, that radiation in your body is your brain's trying to keep up with this frequency, the EMFs, right? And it can't keep up, and it's causing this anxiety. So the acceleradine is not only just detoxing you from those heavy metals and the radiation, but then it's also feeding your thyroid, giving you the physical and the mental energy to get out of that thyroid stress that I mentioned. And it's going to provide the necessary iodine for T4 and T3. That stands for 4 and 3 molecules of iodine. Then the accelerated thyroid, and this was so exciting, is all my clients that are starting to use it, they not only are feeling this like kind of buzz, a steady buzz, it's not like a caffeine buzz, but they're also feeling happy because the fog is lifting, that energy is lifting mentally and physically. And we are going after your thyroid health from different aspects, not just from a glandular, not just from, the T4, which a lot of you are on medication that is strictly T4. That does you no good. Why? Because T4 has to convert into T3. Not into reverse T3 like it will if you're stressed out, and it has to do so in the liver. And if your liver's backed up, then we've got a problem. Well, the accelerated thyroid is the glandular. It's also that amazing Ayurvedic herbal supplement that I've been taking for years and years called Conchanara, and that detoxes the thyroid, improves the thyroid health, and also helps with water balance. I know a lot of you who have suboptimal thyroid also carry around edema and excess water retention. That is a big issue for most people, and it has been for me. So you get that in there, and then it also includes those the scalar frequencies to heal the thyroid. That's the goal. And then to neutralize the toxins found in the thyroid that I had mentioned, and neutralize the radiation. And then you've got the Cognoblast, and the Cognoblast is going to be amazing. amazing for so many of you that are not just looking for that prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia, but the short-term cognition, focus, mood, increased ATP production, but feel good. It increases motivation. It's going to help improve your dopamine, and not to the point where you then have so much pleasure from it that you then have the gremlins go on the pain side. It increases your set point of dopamine. It will decrease that anxiety, improve the motivation, decrease inflammation throughout the body and the brain. It even will support your liver, kidneys, lungs, and your other organs. Super excited about that. And then when you put that with the accelerated keto that flips you into ketosis, you are synergistically increasing your mood, giving you the oomph to go work out, which is the natural way to increase that dopamine, right? That's what she was saying. You need to work hard and live in kind of this state of scarcity, which I love to do. It's funny, when she said that, I realized I like to be in a state of scarcity. I don't like living in a state of abundance. It just kind of keeps me going. But I always try to stay present and in gratitude with what I have. But I want to have that fire to get me going. And the accelerated keto helps with that. It helps with stable, extended energy. It also cleanses the liver for improved thyroid hormone conversion and helps support your mood. That's where you feel like, oh, I have the same problems I had yesterday, but they feel like they're 20 feet away from me and not smacking me in the face. And the stress comes down, your GABA goes up, your dopamine and serotonin go up. And you can then also add in some of the stem cell activation patches like the X39, which increases your detox pathways, increases your stem cell activation, which also resets over 4,000 genes to a younger state. And that's going to help with the toxins and the radiation that lead to hypothyroidism. People just say that they feel happier. And then you've got the Eon patch. This is anti-inflammatory. It's called the happy patch because it calms the brain, reduces the cortisol from chronic stress, elevates DHEA, and balances the autonomic nervous system. And the energy patch, I'll just touch on one more, which helps increase energy and endurance, reduces fatigue and mental issues associated with thyroid issues and depression, and it causes the body to burn about 300 calories extra each day in fat burning, and that's going to increase the circulation to the brain and the body, encourage that mental energy and physical energy. So you're getting this just compounded effect of increasing energy, increasing the happy hormones, and just feeling better. That is the goal. It is truly body, mind, and spirit. You cannot go after just one and feel like that's going to fix it. You know, your antidepressants, I'm not saying that there's not a place for them, but really look to whether you can change your diet, eliminate the alcohol, increase your sleep, prioritize the wild animal protein, get rid of the vegetables that are not healthy for you according to your DNA. And I go through that in my coaching. So join the free group coaching. There's no downside, and start to learn about the healthy wrong foods that could be affecting you. So that is what I wanted to touch on today. And I really hope you do look into Dr. Anna Lembke. She's amazing as far as her knowledge and her book. I love her work. And of course, she went to an amazing school, Stanford. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If I can help you with your health issues, you can contact me directly through my website, sarabantahealth.com, and I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. I know it's sometimes hard to know where to start. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and my YouTube channel under Accelerated Health Radio. You can find all of my episodes on over 100 channels, including iHeart, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to. If you like what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button and share with a few of your friends who may need my help. As you share my channel, it helps me help more people like you and bring more cutting edge guests to the show. Join us every week on Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, and use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide at sarabantahealth.com. Thanks again for joining us here on Accelerated Health Radio, and have a great week.